Perfect.
Here we go. At first I was like, you just join. You can just see the person. I'm like, oh.
Okay, so share on my page.
Oh. Oh, it's already streaming live.
Well, I don't know if it's officially gone through. It's not letting me tag you. It's so annoying.
Yeah, I had that problem too.
Go live.
Does it work now?
It's setting up the webinar for Facebook Live, but I still couldn't tag you. Love-hate relationship with Zoom. Okay. Here we go. We are live now. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in for my chat with Isabel Hunt. I'm really excited to chat with you today. For everybody that doesn't know you, can you do a little introduction to yourself?
Yes. Hold on. Give me a second. I wanted to share that on my Facebook. I don't know if it did that now. So, technology. It's Friday the 13th. What are we expecting, please?
I know, right?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Or maybe we shouldn't have done this.
This is maybe the wrong day to do this, but I'm still really excited in spite of that.
All right. Okay, so for those who don't know me, I know we have quite a similar circle, so a lot of people would probably. For those who don't know me, my name is Isabel Hunt. I am a inspirational speaker, as well as author of my book, The Power of Faith-Driven Success, best-selling co-author and emotions clearing practitioner, as well as certified transformation coach, and I'm sure I forgot something. Something else. But I do work, for one, I teach and coach and speak on the topic of emotions from a spiritual view, more of a spiritual view and scientific. But I also work individually with empath, which means highly, highly sensitive people, and visionaries. Those I consider, or those I call the Empath-Warriors. Those are the visionaries who like to hide.
So some of those might be big words for some people. So could you enlighten us a little bit more with like the Empath-Warriors?
Yeah.
For instance.
Like I said, the empath are those who are highly, highly sensitive. Pretty much what happens, it is being said that about 20 to 30% of today's global population is highly sensitive to the degree of being an empath. I personally believe that everyone has those gifts. However, maybe 20, 30% are more aware. But you can pretty much take it out of everyone if they're willing to. But what that means is that we don't just empathize with people, we literally become them. So if you have someone that you watch, you may not even know them, and they're like bawling and they're really sad, you suddenly feel really sad too, and you don't know why. You might even not pay attention to them, and you go home and you're like, oh my gosh, why am I feeling so sad? Like, what's going on? Where's this coming from? And this is what could happen with people who are empath. And for those that I usually work with, it's hard to reach the empath because, again, they like to hide and they don't like to reach out most of the time. They're like, yeah, just leave me alone. What are you going to do with me? The bed sounds better, which I acknowledge. It's great. But I work usually with those who have those abilities, those empathic abilities, but also have very, very big visions for on a global level, not just within their family, which is great too, but a lot of them have very global visions. And it's hard to bring the introvert together with the extrovert, and creating that balance and not being overwhelmed the whole time. So I teach them certain skills and help them understand how their body works. The great thing is my husband is a naturopath, so everyone who works with me gets a naturopath on the side, which is kind of really cool as a marketing tool. But I help them through some of the emotions healing that keeps us stuck often. I can explain that in a little bit when we get a little bit more into the conversation. But yeah, does that make more sense now?
It does make more sense.
Okay.
So maybe explain, at least for me, what might be some of the difference. So you said your husband's more of a naturopath. I think I said that right. Did I say that right?
He's a naturopath. Yeah, he's a holistic practitioner.
Okay.
It's not like he actually is a nature empath.
Okay.
We're all empaths in my family, which makes it quite interesting on a daily basis. But it also means that we don't have to talk much. We can read each other's mind, which is quite fun. But he's a holistic practitioner. He is a doctor, not a doctor of naturopathy.
Okay, that's really cool. Okay, so how I do want to learn how we can build on this to become better, first of all, versions of ourselves, but even just better bosses or business owners. So I guess continue.
Continue. Nice. That's all right. Let me get some coffee now. Actually, I already drank it all. At least most of it. But okay, so where I'm coming from with my work and what has become really important over the last about 10 years, well, before that, I went through a lot of ups and downs. For those who don't know, I'm originally from Germany. I moved here to the US about 9 years ago. But all of that journey, or this whole journey, really started with a dream that I had at the age of 12. A prophetic dream. I was speaking on stage and in a different language. And I was like, well, heck no, that's never going to happen because I hated English. But from there on, subconsciously, I was always driven to that dream. Every time I kind of drifted off that path, the dream showed up again. And so when I was 18, I came to the US. And for the first time, as in for an exchange year, just to see if that is really what that dream was about. And when you do something and you're really freaking out about it, I mean, it was the first time that I left officially. I know not the country, because in Europe, leaving the country is like driving 30 minutes, but flying across the ocean was the first time. But when I got here, it was like this total yes, like this is exactly where you need to be. And I even questioned if I was born in Germany or if my parents adopted me. No, they did not. They're my family. But that kind of yes that you have, like, this is where I belong, this is where I should be, this is my home. Well, I had to go back, and there was a lot of up and downs from me trying to make this dream happen and not listening to my intuition, and depression, anxiety, and panic attacks, and all those really not so fun things, to the point where I got kicked out of university. And then a couple of years later, I came back, and that didn't work out. I didn't have $60,000. Like, it was really just an absolute up and down. And for anyone who wants to hear the whole story, they can just go get my book, The Power of Faith, Driven Success, which, by the way, is on Amazon. So no excuses there. It's available, audio, Kindle, and paperback. But anyway, so when I came back to the US, there was a lot going on from moving, and people betrayed me and called me a liar and were always offended by me. And I was like, am I really such a horrible person? Like, what is wrong with me that people kick me out of their homes, don't want to talk to me, don't want to be my friend? And am I really that bad? Like, I didn't think I was. And one friend of mine, she really looked at me and said, Isabel, you want to know something? I was like, what? Please be honest with me. If I'm really that horrible, I need to change something. She's like, no. You see people. You look through them. It's almost like when you just look at someone, you can read their mind and they feel that. So they feel threatened by you. What do you see that they don't want to share? what do you know that they know that you know, but they don't want you to know that? I was like, well, that's great, but I don't want people to be scared of me. And I'm very approachable, very down to earth. Like, I love talking to people, and people, like, I get emails from strangers and they tell me their whole story. Like, I don't know why I just told you that. I'm like, I don't know either, but thanks for sharing. It's like, I just feel so comfortable with you, not even knowing you, but I just sent you the whole email. Like, great. So you have the opposites, people who feel threatened by you and people who just totally come to you. And that's when I started this whole journey of what is going on? Like, what is different about me? And then moving a few years forward, I almost got deported. I had to go to Canada, blah, blah. My husband didn't want to get married back then. And then right before I had to book the flight to finally go back to Germany, I was really close to just giving up on this whole creepy, stupid dream of mine. My husband came through the door from work and I said, here is my flight for next month and I have to book it. I just wanted to wait for you so I can hit the submit button. It's a little bit manipulative, but hey, it worked. And he looked at me and was like, no, hold on before you do anything, because I really feel God spoke to me and I can't let you go. The only problem is I don't know how to do it legally. So I gave him a whole list because I already did that research and I said, this is what we're going to have to do. And within 2 weeks we were married. And then after that, I just didn't know. I had a huge identity crisis. I didn't feel German. I didn't feel American. It was just so overwhelming for me to start a new life where I didn't have to struggle. And struggle has always been my middle name, pretty much. I struggled through high school. I struggled through college. I struggled through following that dream. I struggled through getting that husband. I struggled through money issues. I didn't make any money until I was probably 29. And that already is like horrible to even think about. All my friends had great jobs and I didn't. But struggle was my name. And suddenly things just were smoothing out. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? I don't know. And so since my background is in sociology and psychology, I'm a sociologist. I was like, okay, maybe I get into counseling. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. But then a friend of a friend came to me and he's like, hey, I think I have something for you. You would be really great at that. And so he took me to Chicago for a session of a coaching program. I was like, I don't know, coaching, whatever that is. And 7 years ago, that wasn't as popular as it was now. And mostly it was older people, 40 plus, 50 plus people that did coaching. And I was 28, 29. So I was pretty much the youngest. And so I sat there, I watched, and my husband came with me and he's like, if that's not what you're going to do, then I don't know what you're supposed to do, because this is exactly what sounds like you and what sounds like that you would like. And it was spiritual coaching. It was ontological coaching. And I went through the training for a whole year and I was being broken. Literally, everything was broken open and I was breaking down. And I realized how much of a spiritual gift I have as an empath. That was the first time the empath term even showed up. And I realized that everything I've experienced so far is actually a really unique gift. Like, one of them is seeing colors around people, and I can identify that with a certain message. And just over the last 2 years, I found out why and how I'm supposed to use that. It's their heart, their soul speaking to me, because they can't hear it yet, but I can. And I can say, hey, this is something that, a message that you need to know just for now. It can shift. The color can change according to your emotional state. But then I realized that a lot of the people that I started to work with who are also highly, highly sensitive have one thing in common, and that was emotional roller coaster. We all experience it, but when you take on other people's stuff, you don't just deal with your own roller coaster, you deal with the world's roller coaster. And most of them end up being withdrawing, being depressed, anxiety, panic attacks, autoimmune illnesses. Fibromyalgia is a very common one that people have who are highly sensitive because of carrying the world's burden on their shoulder, right? It really is true. And other autoimmune illnesses are often related to the highly sensitive, the nervous system overstimulation that happens as an empath, because your mirror neurons are developed more, how would you call it, or more highly developed than other people's. And again, you just don't mirror things from other people, you become them. And that's when I realized the emotion part is even more important to my clients, but to the world in general, because we have forgotten what it means to be emotionally connected to who we are, to other people. And because of that, we're so emotionally underdeveloped that it creates all the social issues that we have today. And that's where my work comes in, where I studied everything about emotions, not just from the scientific side of it, but how they're being established in your body, what frequency they're on, what that means, and how you interact with your clients or with people in general, with your family, and what you can do differently in creating more awareness to become more reflective instead of reactive. And just yesterday, someone who is an empath, she's going through my emotions course right now, and she said, your course has helped me so much to really understand what I feel, how I can use that, and not react to other people as fast. Like, I don't have to judge them for what they feel. I can just say, oh, they're angry. And in my head, I go through the same questions I would ask myself, and it normalizes the playing field. Like, literally, you normalize the behavior of someone else and you are not reacting to it. And that's where my whole work comes in, and how I got to where I'm at today. And what is it now? 23 years later, I do live that dream that I had at 12 years.
That's amazing. And I have a few questions based off that. If anybody watching or listening has questions, let us know. So first of all, let's kind of start back from that beginning of you're going through this 1-year coaching program. Mm-hmm. How you're done. How in the world do you take that next step?
They actually, through the coaching training, they made you do a couple things, like go out in the street and ask people to coach them and things like that. Like they really tell you to take one no after another. It's really interesting. And I was resisting it so badly but with everything, like when you start coaching, you find yourself, okay, now who is my target market? Who am I supposed to serve? And you start to coach whoever comes your way and whoever wants help from you, because that's the only way you know. And that's great that way. Just know that you're never going to stay there, because eventually you get really bored and you almost even feel resentment. That happened to me, where like, I don't want to work with those people. They annoy me. I don't like them. And I do like them, but like the work I didn't like. Yeah. And that's when I had to rethink really everything and how I want to establish my coaching business. And especially with coaching, it's not a overnight success story like most people think. If I become a coach, I make lots of money. That's what they want to try to make you believe, but that's probably not going to happen for when there is a huge market out there now. I also believe that a lot of people who think you've gone through something traumatic suddenly are able to coach. That is not the truth either. Those are mentors. You mentor through situations, but as a coach, as an occupation, as everything else, if you don't know how to coach and how to ask the right questions, you probably should call yourself a mentor. And the distinction for me was very important, because my background is in sociology and psychology, so I was afraid to get into counseling. And they taught me very well how to balance this very fine line, because that also means legal issues if you cross it. And you can ruin people's lives if you're not careful in what direction you're going. I've seen that a lot of times, where people come to me and have literally burned by coaches who had no idea what they were doing, just because they thought they went through something, or they're at a point where they don't know what they want to do, so they become coaches. I'm not judging. No, I'm not judging. Yeah. But you know where I'm coming from with
Mm-hmm.
that. So coaching is a journey. Like even becoming a coach for me always has been a journey, because the more you get to know yourself, because most of us coaches work with their own coaches, and you discover so much about you and what your real actual message is and what you're passionate about, that you start to attract exactly those people that you want to work with, that resonate with your message, and that where it's fun to work with them and they're really committed to it. So it's a journey. When you start out as a coach, don't give up after 2 years, don't give up after 5 years, don't give up even after 7 years. If you have a really powerful message, you evolve. Coaching is not just something where you go in at work from 9 till 5. I do all this, what people say, and then I get my clients and I get my money. That's probably not the case. It is really a development to becoming the person that can stand in the gap, because you have to figure out what gap that is.
Makes a lot of sense. So, how did you, unique to you, but also maybe advice for others, how do you evaluate that as it is a continual growth journey? First of all, how often maybe? How do you evaluate that? And then how do you become more, I know this is a few questions, how do you become more self-aware of that?
Well, you have to do the work for yourself. If you're not doing the work for yourself and you're resisting working with someone else on your stuff, then you hit a plateau very, very fast, very fast. And one thing, especially as a coach, because coaching is a journey, really, even the occupation as coach is a journey. I was going somewhere with it and I lost my thought on it. Um, mm, mm, mm,
We'll circle back, I'm sure.
Yeah, when when you suddenly like, this is where I want to go with it, and the thought is
Yeah.
gone. But what I was going with that is, it's difficult to evaluate, but I think what can help you to evaluate is how you feel. If you feel constantly frustrated, if you feel constantly overwhelmed, that means something has to shift, or that you're actually resisting a certain shift into a different position. For me, it was, or still is actually, embracing more of the speaker. I've always knew that speaking is for me my platform. I love working with my individual clients, but I'm a visionary. I can see globally and what needs to happen. It's just a gift that I have, and I want to use that to empower people on a bigger scale. Like the other night, right before 4th of July, people were already starting setting off fireworks, and I got so upset, and I to the point where I said to my husband, you know what, I'm realizing I'm not just upset about the fireworks, I'm upset about humanity and where we're at. Give me a global stage, put almost 8 billion people in front of me, and trust me, I have something to say. They would listen. When I'm in that state, I have a presence where people just, they can't move away. Like they can't get out of my way, really. And that's where I see myself. So as a coach, you have to acknowledge that, because often there's more to just being a coach. That could be that you have to be, or that you call to be more involved in something locally, or that you're involved in a specific project that you're really passionate about. And the shift, when you have a shift coming up, you know that, because you, again, feel tired, you feel exhausted, you get frustrated, you get overwhelmed. And often we just take a look or focus on the overwhelm instead of what is the shift about and where do I have to shift towards to. And so we get stuck right there.
That
Did
makes
that
a lot of
answer?
sense. It did. You call yourself a visionary. I think I can personally relate to that. How personalities, at least like myself, sometimes it's hard to do these smaller picture items. I'm not sure if
Yes.
that's like with you.
Yep.
How do you juggle that? Like, how do you find that, like, help with that internal motivation to do the stuff that isn't the bigger picture?
I can absolutely relate to that. Even when I have conversations with people about a social issue, they always like, well, you need to look into the detail. This is where it's how it looks like here in this community. I was like, I don't care. I can't see that. Like, I see the bigger picture and I know how we have to move things around. But one thing that I've learned, especially when it comes to details, listen to other people. I have brought on a few people that can do the detail work for me that I don't want to do. Especially in business, it's like little things like, can you send an email to this person if I can be on their podcast? Or can you post that on my social media? Like, I have my person who posts my stuff because I don't want to do it. It's the little stuff, right? But one thing that helps me too, especially as a visionary, is to keep track. Like, if you would see my calendar, every single task I need to do is on my calendar, and I give me a time. Like, if I have emails in the morning, 30 minutes, and that's it. Whatever I have been able to do in 30 minutes and answering emails, that's it. Then the people, I mean, my clients are always first in answering anyways, but anything outside of that, just new connections, they have to wait. And it's about understanding your boundaries. As a visionary, you tend to float away very easily. It's almost like your whole energy is just all over the place. And I'm like, well, that looks really nice. Let me do this, or this project sounds really good too. And you have really hard time bringing in your energy and focusing on what you have to do. And I think the more you're aware of when that happens, the more you're able to just say, okay, I'm bringing in my energy and I'm focusing for the next hour on this project. And then I'm going to do this. Like right now, I'm working on my TED Talk. If I get in or not, I don't know yet, but hopefully. But I still have to work on it. I still want to use that speech in some capacity. And I already think I know how, but it's hard for me. I drift off so fast. It's like, well, this sounds really good too, but that would put it into a 2-hour talk. Or that's something people need to know too. And so I really have to wheel myself back in. It's like, okay, Isabel, come back. Just do this one page right now. Just one page. And then you can drift off for a little bit again. And then you have to wheel yourself back in and do another page. But it's practice. It's a huge awareness. When you realize you're drifting, you're spreading your wings. That sometimes you just have to sit and wait. And patience is very, very hard for visionaries. I see it.
I definitely get that. And I want to say welcome to Sharon Falk and Megan Carvaro, who have joined us. And I think you and I are similar. How do you encourage empaths to help keep that energy positive, especially when it's doing these tasks that are smaller picture, or making sure self-care is 100% at the forefront sometimes?
Yeah. Well, especially when you have everything happening around you, when you get influenced by other people even more, in addition to what you know you have to do for yourself. Plus, we both have 4-year-olds, so we know how that feels too. I don't know what mine is doing right now. He's supposed to take a nap. He won't come in, but he will probably just go get a snack. I don't know. But you have to juggle all of those, right? Staying motivated. I think one thing that I have realized about myself as well as my clients is to keep the bigger picture in mind. Why are we doing what we're doing? And for me, that's why I call it the I see you movement. For me, it's I want people to know that I see them. And okay, my gift makes it quite easy for me to just see the human being, the individual. However, I'm also very eager to teach other people to say, hey, can you just see this person? Not the labels, not the boxes, not what you see, but on the outside, but see them, really see them at the core by understanding a couple of different things like your emotions. But keeping that in mind and having that in front of me always, like I have it on my wall, helps me to stay motivated for the little things. This is why I do things. This is why I have to it's just part of the bigger picture. If I do this, I'm getting closer to creating that bigger vision. And as I said, very strict boundaries. Like my son would never come in the door unless he's really hurt or something. But he wouldn't open the door because he knows when the door's closed, mommy has to work and I can't go in. It's very clear boundaries. When the door's open, he can, and I still work, but he can come in. The same with clients. I have to be very strict with my boundaries. Those are my hours. This is when you can call me, or okay, email me. Don't call me because I won't answer unless it's your time of a call. But keeping your phone, like I have the one that has the cover. It's always covered up, so I don't see everything that's going on, because visionaries and empaths get very distracted very easily. And so be sure what distracts you. For example, I have my curtains down too, because I know it's a beautiful view and I would just sit here daydreaming if I wouldn't have it down. I'm aware of that. So I make sure that I don't see as much, even though the pond is really nice. A little dry right now, but nice. But I know what I need to be able to do this work. And empathic work is always spiritual work. You're always doing the internal work, the spiritual connection. You cannot do this work without the understanding of co-creating with a divine power, because it would really wear you out. At some point you withdraw. At some point you might even just burn out. And a lot of empaths are also more prone to suicidal attempts. That is also something we have to be aware of. But if you know that, you can work with it and say, okay, I know this is what's going to happen. What do I need? How can I take care of myself first? Who can I ask for help? That's very important. You need to have a list of people that can support you in different areas. Like Lena, my web designer, is like, Lena, I'm freaking out over here. Can you please do this? And she's like, okay, I'll take a look. And she usually knows when I try to call her, because she's also an empath. We're very connected. So it's nice to have that, those kind of people in your life. So you need to have a support system. You need to have very clear boundaries. Make as many lists as you need to stay motivated, and make yourself write it somewhere, note it somewhere, the bigger vision of what you're going for and why you have to do little things to reach that bigger vision.
I love those tips. And Sharon said that she can definitely relate to squirrel mentality. So I'm wondering if she's similar along. But I love those tips. And I've learned how important boundaries are. Putting boundaries on myself and, you know, your toddler or your spouse, or I think, but it's hard putting boundaries on clients or customers, or however anybody watching defines it. But it's so critical, and I definitely relate to that. I feel like if I don't, it's just draining. And I've learned to start identifying like what helps my energy and what drains my energy.
Yeah. Well, especially with highly, highly sensitive people, one thing that I've learned, the bigger you play, the more you have to withdraw within in a good way, like not withdrawing from the world, leave me alone kind of depressive state. But the bigger you play, the more you have to go within. I have a lot of people that call me, it's like, it feels like I'm going one step forward and two steps backwards. Like, no. You're going one step forward and two steps inward. There's not backwards. You're going inward, because the bigger you play, the more you receive. It's like even online or when you're on stage, the bigger you play, the more people you have in front of you. Everyone has a judgment about you. Everyone reads something and it has an opinion. And we know, since everything is energy, they're sending out those thoughts and you receive them. If you don't take care, like if you don't have a sacred practice, like for me, I meditate every morning and I have a protection prayer from my coach. I use it every single morning, or I would be overwhelmed constantly. When I don't do it, I take critiques personally. When I protect myself, I can just say, okay, I just can look at it and let it go. And then I don't dwell on it for a week or two or three or four. But it's like when you're on stage, the first time I went on stage, I had total blackouts. And I was like, why? I was so prepared. What's happening? And I had to learn that my brain was occupied with reading everyone who was sending thoughts towards me. Was there expectation from the audience? It was any kind of thought that they had. It may have not even had anything to do with me. But there's one experiment that I do with people on stage every now and then. I have a volunteer come on stage and I tell them that if I do the thumb up, the whole audience is supposed to send positive thoughts towards the person on stage. If I do thumbs down, they're supposed to send negative thoughts towards the person on stage. And after every time, like the positive, I muscle test the person on stage. They don't know because they can't see my thumb. I do it so they can't see it. They don't know what people send to them. So I muscle test them every time. And when they send positive thoughts, their muscles stay very strong and they feel good too. They know, like, I feel actually pretty good. When they start sending hateful, mean, negative thoughts towards the person, the muscles get very weak and they even can feel it shift within them. They're like, I feel weird. Like, it feels like it's taking my breath away. I just feel heavy and it just doesn't feel good. And then of course we switch it around so they feel good again. But, it just shows what an impact people have on you, no matter how many people they're in front of you. It could be 1, it could be 100, it could be 1,000. But again, the bigger you play, the more eyes are on you, the more you have to protect yourself because your brain is like, well, let me feel all that. That's fun. Let me try to figure this out. And when your brain is occupied, you can actually focus on the actual task. It's with everything. If you're on social media, if your brain is occupied with taking in all the energy from world events and people that respond to you, you can't focus on what you're supposed to do, what you're called to do in that moment. And that's where I teach my clients how to protect yourself, a bunch of different exercises. They go through my emotions course as well, because they need to know that as well. And then we can work through all of that and what comes up in stories, and we release some of those heavy trapped emotions. And we started talking about that in the beginning. I know a lot of people are like, trapped emotions, what's that? So what happens is every emotion is a received energy on a specific frequency, and especially empaths feel that even more. We're so much more aware of just a slight difference of energy vibration that we're receiving. And you even feel it when it's not visible to other people yet. Like if you can feel someone starting to boil up and you can't see it on the outside, you already feel something is up. Whereas I'm like, what? I don't see anything until they explode. And I'm like, see, I told you it's going to happen, right?
Yes.
So what happens with emotions is that not just our emotional world, but other people's, we're so focused on fast pace. We can't allow certain emotions like fear, on entrepreneurship and fear. Oh my gosh, don't bring both together. If you ask anyone, it's like, oh yeah, we have to push through it. We have to overcome fear. And I'm sitting there like, why? It's not your enemy. Just give it a little love and just take the steps anyways. But there's certain questions I help my clients ask so they can create more awareness around that. But because we have stigmatized emotions and separated that from spirituality, we're so disconnected. We're not just disconnected within ourselves, but also disconnected with the people around us, with our clients, with the world in general, with nature even. And so what happens is when we ignore certain emotions, or like, oh, I can't, law of attraction is really awesome. Because a lot of people think, I can't think anything negative. Like I can't feel anger because then I'm attracting more of that. I can't feel fear because then I'm attracting more of that. That's not true. Actually, when you suppress it, when you ignore it, that's when you attract more of it. If you just say, okay, I'm feeling fear, I'm sad, I feel grief. With entrepreneurs, that can happen a lot when you have to let go of a client or a project. There's a grief process with it. When we just have it out in the open, we can be friends with it. I'm like, okay, what do I have to let go of? Where do I have to give myself some grace? Or where can I acknowledge myself? What are my needs in relation to the emotion that I experience? And then you can just let go of it. Emotion, energy in motion, right? But if you suppress it, because you need to get this task done, or you have a deadline, or people would judge you, that's when this energy just gets trapped within your body. Often because of its vibration, its frequency, it attaches to specific organs in your body. Like, for example, people who have a lot of liver problems usually have anger problems. People who have a lot of kidney stones or kidney problems in general often deal with worry about family, about the future, often even about finances. If you suffer a lot from lower back pain, that is very much related to that. If you have created any blocks around future, that's usually related to your lower back. I had one client, we did an emotions clearing, and I can do those remotely. He's like, my lower back hurts, and he was only in his early 20s, and is like, well, that's pretty interesting. So we went through the whole process of clearing. I'm using a specific process to go through that, and we asked some questions, and it came out that was his fear of the future. A lot happened in his family that took that future away from him that he imagined for himself. And when we released worry and resentment were the big ones for him. When we released that, it's like, I haven't had any lower back pain problems since. It feels like something was taken away from me. Everyone responds differently, but some suddenly have creative spurts. Like, oh my gosh, I just created this and this within 2 days, and I don't know where it came from. For me, when I clear trapped emotions, I wanted to purge everything. Like, I have this energy to go through every single closet every time. Like, what else can I get rid of? What else? Like, it's almost like this process of getting rid of stuff. I think you get stuck. Amy? I don't know if it's mine or is it hers. Okay, I'm just gonna keep talking because it looks like Amy is gone. But that's where we're talking about trapped emotions, oops, are you back? You muted yourself.
Oh, sorry, everybody. Okay, we're back.
I don't know who was gone, if it was me or you, but I think I still saw myself.
I think it was my internet. My husband's home today on Fridays, and I think the bandwidth of us sharing tasks. Anyways, so
we're adding a little bit more energy to it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel like I loved that example of the cleansing. First of all, it took me decades, okay? It's two and a bit decades, my entire life almost, until very recently, to, I guess, learn the emotion myths. And like, myths are okay. I think a lot of us or myths are okay. Emotions are okay. I think a lot of us are trained to unfortunately suppress emotions. And my husband and I are on this journey to embrace the emotions, but it's definitely difficult sometimes to retrain that.
Yes, because suddenly when you feel anger and you want to acknowledge it as okay, then you feel guilty. But what if it's not okay and people don't want to be with me? Like, all those different thoughts. But some of the things that I teach in my course help people really just to take a distance to, like, become the observer. I love bringing on the example of The Matrix, and I finally have to see the movie. I still haven't seen it, but I love Keanu Reeves. But anyways, so when whatever his name is, who plays Keanu Reeves, but when he has bullets coming at him, you know, where he's training himself to the point that he can already see them coming and then slowly moves out of it. It's almost everything is slow motion. That's what you can train yourself, especially as an empath. That's very important. And that's what I train my clients to become the observer, to see everything already coming at you, but you can move according to what's happening. And you can distinguish between what you want to feel and what you do feel without the judgment around it. Okay, I feel anger. What is it that I'm not paying attention to? Anger is usually around boundaries. That's why children get angry a lot,
Mm-hmm.
because they grow every single day, and every single day they have to recreate their boundaries. As an entrepreneur, when you grow, you have to recreate your boundaries, and there are times where you just get angry, and that's okay, unless you start hitting people and let it out on people. But with what I teach, we want to avoid that. I had one guy, interestingly enough, I have more guys signing up for well, more guys signing up for the course. Very interesting to me, because I never thought that. But they love it. They actually sent me messages like, hey, I just went through this exercise and this is awesome. I wasn't aware how much anger I still have inside of me, and now I feel so much better because I have a tool that I can use. Instead of yelling at my wife, I can just yell at my wall, and I feel safe, and my wife feels safe, or my kids feel safe, or my girlfriend. And it's incredible, just those little tiny changes, how that can change how we respond to each other. Because again, if he doesn't yell at his girlfriend, she doesn't yell back at him and feels mistreated, and you have all this spiral down go on, right? You can just say, okay, I'm angry, I'm gonna lock the door real quick and yell on my pillow at the wall or somewhere, or go for a run. And the other person is, okay, I see that, I will let you do this, I'm okay with that, and you don't feel offended by anything that they might say within that anger rage. But the more you distance yourself and the more you become the observer, the easier it gets. And trust me, I mean, I've been doing this work for 7 years almost, and I still get trapped in it. It's not like, oh yeah, now life is awesome and I can just be the observer all day and everything just comes easily. No. Because there has been so much trapped inside of us and inherited even from generations to generations. It's the epigenetics, if anyone wants to look that up, where you can literally changes that have happened in your grandparents genetically and in your parents, and even further down, shame is a big one that changes the DNA, the genes within your DNA, and what we're responding to. I had one client, he felt a lot of anxiety, and I asked him about the family history in terms of anxiety. And he's like, well, my dad has it, my grandfather had it. So we took a look. Didn't you know it? His anxiety was inherited. And it's gotten better over time. Sometimes it takes a few sessions to really make those changes, and some coaching additionally. But he could feel a difference. And he's like, really, that is possible? Like, it is really possible if we even take a look at the science behind it. We carry so much with us that our generation now is just totally overstimulated just from existing without even doing anything ourselves. We already have carried so much with us that if we wouldn't do anything, if we wouldn't feel anything, if we wouldn't talk to anyone, we already would be overstimulated. But again, we still have life around us. There's still people around us. There's additionally technology that is energy, right? That adds to your system, to your nervous system. And we have to find new ways to deal with that if we don't want to see a total breakdown of social society, of global society.
I'm curious. You were mentioning statistics earlier. Statistically, empaths, what type of career paths do they tend to fall into?
They always want to help. They always have this helper syndrome. But most of the time, it's if they're not aware why they're doing that, it's if they can help someone feel better, it makes them feel better. So it's more of a coping mechanism. I see that with a lot of people who are in the social field or even nonprofit, people who want to help, who feel the passion to step in for someone else. If they don't do the work on themselves, they get burned out within just a few years, because by trying to help someone else, you're subconsciously taking their pain away. It's like with children. When Jonah was still very little, when he didn't feel well, he always just wanted me. He'd never wanted my husband. Okay, there's the mom-child relationship, right? But it was just very odd to me because he literally grabbed onto me at a very young age already, especially when he was around 1 or 2, when he experienced the world a little bit more. And my husband, since he has a similar background, and we were really good at working together. He looked at me as like, I can see something. Like, what is that? It's like, he screams for you because you as a mom don't like him suffering, so you take the pain away from him. Because every time he started to feel better, I started to feel worse, or I got sick. I was like, why is that? Like, always this dynamic. And he's like, because you're taking on his pain. But he needs to have those experiences to be on his path, to learn through those. You cannot take someone else's suffering away. You can support them. You can be by their side, but you cannot take it away, because it's always something that their soul needs to heal. Every challenge you experience, everything you go through, it's your soul giving you a hint of, hey, this is where you need to still heal. And again, that could be inherited, that could be generational thing, could be something that you have experienced while you were in the womb, anything like that, but it's always a cry out for healing. And so once I did that, every time he cried, I was like, okay, I'm doing my protection exercises so I don't take it on. And now he's able to, even already at the age of 4, to just acknowledge what he feels, the pain, and he's saying like, okay, I know now how to work through that myself. And so people who are usually empath have to learn to not take on other people's stuff because they want them not to suffer, because when they see them not suffering as much, they believe on the outside that they suffer less. It's not the truth. You're just covering it up.
I completely understand that.
Yeah.
I think a few of us completely understand that. Okay, so for someone that isn't sure where to get started, what would you recommend their next steps be?
For one, if you're hiding, if you're watching that underneath your bed, under the blanket, come out. You need to breathe.
Yeah.
You need to breathe. And one thing that I say to people in general, learn how to protect yourself. One thing that helps, it's very easy when you start out, when you realize, okay, I think I can identify with being highly sensitive and I'm taking on other people's stuff. Go outside, go for walks, ground yourself. Don't wear shoes, just go with your bare feet in the dirt. And the reason is the earth, the soil itself is has a negative polarity. And so if we take on a lot of stuff, we have a negative polarity around us. And when we ground, that's when negative plus negative equals positive. When we get back to center, to balanced again, because our core, our very core essence is always positively charged, because it's the divine core. It's always, and there has been research done on that too, where they can actually measure that. So that's why grounding is very, very important. Eating healthy. If you feel really overwhelmed by everything, we tend to binge eat and we tend to fast food and junk food eat, right? Chocolate sounds really good always to me. But it doesn't help. It just creates another overstimulation of toxins in your body. And so you feel even worse. So try to watch what you eat. Try to eat as clean as you can. I know that's the new fashion word, but what I'm saying with that is step away from the heavy fats, like even meat. Often empaths are actually more drawn to eating less meat because it's very heavy. Depends on how your body talks, but really pay attention to what you eat. The third one is, when you're an empath, watch your relationships. Pay attention. What are the people that feel very heavy to you, that always seem to take advantage of you? Where do you need to set boundaries? Sometimes you need help for that from someone else to be able to break through that and put your foot down and say, someone who cheers you on is like, you can do this. Tomorrow we're going to get on a call, and you have made that boundaries clear with your husband or with your wife. But boundaries is a very big thing. And then the fourth one, and I'm not just saying that because I created it, but if you know about your emotions and how to navigate your emotional world, you are like 1,000 steps ahead of anyone who has never even heard of that and still hiding underneath their bed, because it helps you to acknowledge what you feel and acknowledge what someone else feels. And when you're aware of that, you can distinguish what is yours and what is theirs. And then you can set the intention of not taking on other people's stuff as much as you probably would have if you're not aware. So anyone, I'm doing total self-promotion right here. Totally. The course is called The Empowered Warrior, How to Successfully Navigate Your Emotional World. And it's very affordable too, by the way, but it's for the busy individual. It's just 9 modules with short videos about each emotion. And then there's a cheat sheet that explains the emotion again, that brings in the spiritual aspect of emotions as well, and questions to ask yourself. And some exercises, if you're really doing them, it will help. Like, as I said, yesterday, someone posted in my group saying, hey, I'm going through your course. It is incredible. Like, it has helped me through a really hard time over the last weeks. It helps me to be with people at my work in a different way and not be as dragged down all day long. And you can find it, by the way, at theempoweredwarrior.com.
I'm posting that comment now.
Okay, cool.
Theempoweredwarrior.com.
Yeah. So that is definitely a good start. And then you probably want to take a look at, okay, what are stories that I have taken on that are actually not true? And that probably needs some support, especially that you probably have taken on emotions from other people more than that are your own. It could be from your mom, from your dad, even from your grandparents or siblings, anyone that you felt close with and really cared about. And empath, and especially empath-warriors, the visionaries, well, they care about the world. So that makes it a little difficult. There have been days where I just sit here and like, God, please, I don't want to do this anymore. Why me? Give it to someone else. Just let me stop right here. Can I just be wife and mom? And then when I try, like when I say, okay, I'm going to quit my work, no matter what is going on, I'm quitting. It lasts maybe for 2 hours. I'm back.
Yeah, that's totally me. My husband says I need to stop. Like, it's not my responsibility to save the world. I'm like, but it is my responsibility to save the world.
Oh yeah, my gosh, we would just get along fine. Oh, I say the same thing, and then my husband's like, well, just find a job then if you're not happy. You're like, no, you don't get it. I just need to get it out.
It's like, I'm so close.
We already have done that impact, but it's always like more. Now we haven't reached the 7 billion yet. We need to get on stage, like with Justin Bieber. You know my story with Justin Bieber.
Yes, I feel differently about Justin Bieber after your story. Yeah, Duncan says that I'm not allowed to watch the news at all.
No, we're neither. None of us does.
I'm not allowed.
No, none of us does. We're 3 empaths in one family. Doesn't go well if anyone does watch anything. We don't watch much TV in general. I don't have time to watch TV. And everything I hear is already enough. Like, that already riles me up where I'm like, oh, I want to scream at someone.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm totally with you on that. But yeah, my husband is the opposite. I'm more like the temper. Maybe it's the German in me. I don't know. But people always tell me that you're always direct. Like, you say what you think when you look at, like, I don't sugarcoat much if I don't have to. Maybe sometimes for marketing reasons because I would cuss too much. But in general, you get what you see, and I'm very direct, and I always feel like I have to step in situations, and my husband is more like the mellow kind of back guy.
Yep.
You don't have to get involved in that right now. You don't have to get involved in this conversation. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm like, but I want to say something because this is stupid what they just said. Like, and he's like, no, you don't. And my husband, he's like the in-between. He's a pretty good mix of both of us. He can be very mellow, but at the same time, he is very caring. He wants to, but he's also very connected to the environment. He is in that case like me. He wants to save the environment when he's an adult. He says, when I'm grown up, I'm going to save the environment, mommy. I'm like, okay. So he gets very upset when people litter, especially when he sees it. He picks it up and gives it back to them. And he, like, when people waste water, especially during the summer when it's already dry, and Americans love their lawns, which is crazy to me, but all right. But he went to neighbor and he's like, neighbor, you're wasting water. This is not good. And I don't like it. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go back inside. I can hear this. But he's very, very direct, but at the same time, very introspective in how he experienced the world. Like there are things, it's something about empath, they're very spiritual connected, right? And some of us can actually see spirits and experience spirits. I now have boundaries for them. They can't just show up anymore. They used to, especially in my in-between sleep, like, the twilight zone sleep where you're not quite awake but not really asleep either. And he does that too. And so I had to teach him some prayers and what he can say for them not to bother him. But when I had my miscarriages, especially the last two, he was more aware and he never was worried. He was like, Mommy, Annie is still here with us. I'm like, for one, why Annie? He's like, I don't know. She said her name is Annie and we never told anyone, but we were going to call our girl Adeline. So it's quite close to Annie. He's like, no, she's still playing with me. She's right here. Don't you see her? I was like, no. And then a couple of days or weeks go by. I was like, where's Annie? It's like, oh, she told me that she's going to go and find a body and then she comes back to us. Like those are conversations you have with your 4-year-old when they're empath.
That's so funny. When my dad died, I was talking to my boss at the time, who she comes from an Indian culture, and she was bringing in these things. So I was telling her an experience he had the day he died and how it was anyways, but she was saying that I might get this wrong because it's been a few years, that there's this belief in their culture that children up to 5, they are so much more sensitive and in tune to that. And so it made sense that there was my dad being literally hours away from death and my daughter, who was at 1 at the time, like there was like this, they weren't, my daughter was with my husband's family because I was at the hospital with my dad, and they had like this thing and they had this connection, and it was eerie. And then she explained that to me and I was like, it's very, I love that cultural thing, first of all, but that just reminded me of that.
And I always, like, even when I lost her, I mean, we had her heartbeat and everything, and for some reason my son is just a miracle child. We lost 4, so we're done now. But he always says, like, no, Annie is still here. She's just trying to find a body so she can come to us. And a child who's never heard about any of that doesn't just say that. Like, we don't talk that way. We don't read books like that. It's not on the news. It's not like, you can't say they just make that up. Like, where would they get that idea from? And it always fascinated me. Like, when the last one, I ended up in the hospital, there were some complications. It was the middle of the night, and our neighbor came over to pick up my son, and he was sleeping. And he woke up a little bit when she took him, and he looked at her and was like, Mommy lost the baby, didn't she? And he didn't know because it all happened in the middle of the night. And she just started crying. She's like, yeah. Like, oh, no worries. She'll come back. And she was like, I didn't know what to say. I mean, he was 3, and it's just so incredible how children in general, I think every child is very empathic. And if we can keep that going, we probably would have even more empath in this world, which would help us in creating more connection and understanding. But most of us, because our parents are so busy, don't foster that. We don't pay attention. We just call them emotional. They're just kids. But they can teach us so much more about being an empath than what I could have ever imagined. With him, my business accelerated because he taught me so much.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. I know. I think I was introduced to you by a parent, and she had quoted you, and I don't know. It was like, I guess you were teaching how she can harvest that for her kid. And I was like, I need to do that.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah. That's
and I was like, that is my goal in life, is I'm probably going to screw up my kid. Every parent always screws up their kid. But
I don't think so. One thing that you can already do with any children, whoever is watching, if you find your child being very emotional, to foster the empathic side of them or the sensitive side of them, just ask them what they need instead of saying what is wrong, because then they already internalize that what I feel is wrong. And then when they grow up, they're emotionally immature and don't want to express any of that. Just ask them, what do you need? My son is now every time like, Mommy, I just need a hug. I feel sad. Can I get a hug, please? And so I give him the hug. I let everything go, whatever I was doing, and I give him that hug and the kiss, or he just wants to read a book. Those are his needs. Those are the child needs. But as an adult, we often forget to ask what it is that we need. It could be a nap too. Or we can't because we have the deadline, so we don't listen to our needs. And that takes away from our intuition.
Great tip. I like that, because I definitely want to foster it's hard as an adult to retrain yourself. So it's like trying to foster that as young as possible. I love that. Well, I'm going to let you go. I loved talking with you, and a few people joined on. Jason Dollinger jokingly said, "Are you saying chocolate is bad for empaths?"
No. But go with the dark chocolate. That actually helps. Calming your nerves a little bit because of whatever is in the dark chocolate. Ask my husband about it, he knows, but if we do eat chocolate, it's dark chocolate. No. I mean, everything in mass, right? You have to be aware with everything, but if it tends to that you gulp down a whole pack of chocolate bars because you feel emotionally distressed, then that's probably not good.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I pinned the Empowered-Warrior. I will post your book. I'm very intrigued, and I'm excited about if you get the TED Talk regardless. I'm really excited about continue following on your journey. But again, thank you so much, Isabel. Is there any last things that you want to share, or I don't know?
Yeah, actually one thing, and it came up over the last couple of days very often with other entrepreneurs, success is not always measured regarding how much money you make. Sometimes your entrepreneur journey is actually how much trust you can establish, how many connections you make, how much love you can spread. That could be your measure of success. It is not always money. I get annoyed when people say, you can only be on the show if you make 7 figures. I'm like, whatever. I guess you don't understand that someone who may not make 7 figures still has a very important message. I'm not saying that money is not important and wouldn't make an impact, right? But we get so hung up on it that, especially when you are an ambivert, an introverted entrepreneur, set your measures a little differently than what the world might tell you about entrepreneurship.
That is the perfect message to end on, and I completely agree. I am a big believer that nothing is a one-size-fits-all, especially with my own clients. It's like everybody has an individualized journey and all that. So I love that. Yeah. If you guys have any questions, if you guys want to learn more, there's a lot of great resources from Isabel. And thank you for watching, listening, and thank you again, Isabel.
Thank you for having me.
Stop live stream. Okay, we're done. So thank you again. That was very educational. I loved it so much. So
you're welcome. As you can tell, I love talking about it.